I think that adding or re-adding Travion Henderson, adding Quinshon Judkins, emphasizing the run game and playing strong defense, which they had a pretty strong defense last season. I think that's their road to the national championship. Here, I actually don't have it right now, but I will eventually. But again, V for Vendetta, the best scene. What comes over here is our, and I forgot what this detective or this police officer was saying, but he basically says, "Yeah, I've got this feeling. I went to Lark Hill, where the accident happened. I've got this weird feeling that it all just kind of made sense. I had this personally, I had this feeling last season with a rival of Ohio State, the Michigan Wolverines." So when I talk about that there, what I basically want to go over is the fact that last season, Zach Zinter, Blake Corum, tons of other guys decided to come back to Michigan. You're always like, man, wait, these guys could go to the NFL. They could make more money. What are they doing? They all decided to come back because they felt like something special was going to happen for them. They ultimately, the over under on them for wins in the regular season was 10.5. They finished with 12, went 14-0, and then 15-0 to win the national championship there. Everything lined up perfectly for them. I'm starting to think that I'm looking at the team right here. They're not crosstown, but the next state rival, the Ohio State Buckeyes. And I'm starting to see the fact that, man, it really feels like this is kind of lining up for them in a lot of different ways. First thing I want to do is go over their previous records because they've had a really interesting run these last couple of seasons. So in the same way for for Michigan, Michigan was dominant. They came out there, they beat Ohio State, 42-27 a couple years ago. Last year, they beat the hell out of them at their place. And then this year, I know technically it would be last year. You understand what I'm trying to say. The last season, not the season that just happened, but the season before that, they went to Ohio State and they won that game. That was the real surprise. That the year before, they had Cade McNamara was the quarterback, and then they had JJ McCarthy kind of was their gadget guy who would come in. But you saw the fact that they did really well there. However, they got to the CFP. They played Georgia, weren't ready for Georgia. Okay. And then the next season, they got to the CFP. They played TCU, even let that one go. They ultimately lost that game too. But then the next season, it felt like, okay, we know what we are. They know what we are. Let's go through and let's win this thing. And they did. Looking at Ohio State here, in the last 3 seasons, 23, 22, and 21, they've only lost to 4 programs. Okay. They are 33-6. They've gone 11-3 or 11-2 3 times in a row. They've only lost to 4 programs. They lost to Oregon. They lost to Georgia. They lost to Missouri in the bowl game this last season. And they lost to Michigan 3 times. And you really feel like, there's a lot of people who are like, oh man, we got to get Ryan Day. We're calling for his head. We got to get him out of here. But you look at what they've done here. I mean, they've won so many of these games. I know a lot of people say, oh, that Notre Dame game came down to the wire. Listen, and the games they've lost. I mean, they lost to Michigan last year. That was a close game. They lost to Georgia. They were 1 field goal away from winning that game. So the narrative that this team is super far away or Ryan Day isn't the right guy is a stupid narrative. That's a fan's narrative, a fanatic's narrative. These guys this last season, unbelievable. They lose 1 game and they're out of the CFP. This is why I'm very excited. A lot of people are not excited about the new CFP model, where it's like, oh, well, these guys are going to blow regular season games because the regular season doesn't matter anymore. The more the playoffs does. And I'm like, yes, it does. Okay. Absolutely. Can you imagine if they beat Michigan in that game and they go from a first round bye to having to potentially play on the road? Again, that's a very, very rare narrative, but it could happen if they lose those games. The narrative that in the future in a 12 or a 16 team playoff that, oh, well, these regular season games don't matter as much. I'm like, well, yeah, well, unfortunately for college football, most of the regular season games, I think the average line across all college football games, the average betting line was 20 points. That's so the narrative that like, oh gosh, we're gonna get less regular season games. Well, unfortunately, there's not that much rules or regulations around the regular season, and I actually have more faith in the playoff. But again, either way, let's get back to Ohio State. We see what they've done here. Okay, they had 1 6-point loss at the number 3 team in the country, and then ultimately everybody left in the transfer portal and this and that, and a bunch of people, a bunch of opt-outs of the bowl game. They lose the bowl game to Missouri 14-3. But you look at what they've done. First of all, in the players that are coming back, in addition to the players that they just got. All right. So they did lose a fair amount of players, But looking at the guys that got in the transfer portal. So Julian Sand, former top flight quarterback, was a 5-star in the transfer portal. Caleb Downs, starting safety for a freshman All-American guy for the Alabama Crimson Tide at safety. He comes over. Okay. Quinshaw Judkins. We all remember him. 2 years ago, he was the best running back in college football as a freshman. This last year, he's got a zillion touchdowns as well. He decides to come over, even leaving Ole Miss, and Ole Miss was the team that everybody else was coming to. Ole Miss was getting a ton of guys in the transfer portal. They need it because their defense isn't quite there yet. But we see the fact that he decides to leave that ship for Ohio State. Seth McLaughlin, starting offensive lineman for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And then Will Howard, the starting quarterback for the Kansas State Wildcats, comes over as Kyle McCord leaves. So those are the guys that they just got. Now, looking at the guys that they decided to keep or decided to stay with them also shows you the fact that this team is going to be absolutely positively loaded. So we look over here at this. So who's staying? So wide receiver Emeka Egbuka. I feel like he's been there for 9 years. I remember him, I just got absolutely tearing people up. Denzel Burke, Ty Hamilton, Jordan Hancock, Travion Henderson, thinking about this right here. It is not outside of the realm of possibility that Ohio State might have 2 of the top 5 best running backs in college football in their backfield. 2 guys, I guarantee you they're gonna concentrate on running the ball. I guarantee you that. Donovan Jackson, Lathan Ransom, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, and Tylee Williams. They did they did lose a couple of these guys. They lost Steel Chambers, Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Hall, Xavier Johnson, Matt Jones, and then Mayan Williams. And a lot of these people down here entered the transfer portal. Jair Brown ultimately went to LSU. But you look at these guys here. All these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those 10 starters, plus you'd talk about the guys that they had from the other, post there, which was Caleb Downs, Quinshawn Judkins, Seth McLaughlin, Will Howard. They might have 14, 15 starters back on a team that went 11-1 when they cared. Again, the bowl game was gone. But you look at this team, man, and they've got so many things that are lining up for them at this point. I mean, check out their schedule too, because the schedule is very, very what's the term I want to use here? Good for them is what we'll say. Coming over here and checking out their schedule. So the cool thing is that we are less than 2 months away from their spring game, first of all. Then we've got the Akron Zips, the Western Michigan Broncos, and the Marshall Thundering Herd, 3 former MAC teams, and all at home. So again, it's going to be August. It's going to be Akron Zips, whatever. Western Michigan, September 7th, whatever. 14th is a bye. Then they have the 21st. They play the Marshall Thundering Herd. They never leave home until late September. Then they go and they play at Michigan State. Remember, with Jonathan Smith, new guys in there. You got Aiden Childs. We'll see how they can do that. I do know that they're still going to be the line of this game is probably going to be plus or minus 10 for Ohio State, something like that. Very next week, they play the Iowa Hawkeyes away from Kinnick Stadium. So that's going to be a win for them. Now, there's a couple of these that are going to be this right here. This 3-game stretch with a bye week is going to be interesting. So they've got at Oregon, number 3 team in the country right now. Again, whether or not that 3 changes here, we got a long time. Lots of transfer portal here and there. We got a long time until October 12th to see what that rank actually is. But Oregon looks like they're going to be one of those teams. They've got a bye week the next week, and then they play Nebraska. Nebraska is a complete wild card. I'm actually going to have a video eventually here where it's going to be of the Big Ten West former remnants of those teams, those 6 teams there. Let me see if I can do it real quick. Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota. Those 6 teams. If you look at the new Big Ten, it's really, really going to be hard for any of those teams in a divisionless system to get to the top. You have to be first or second in a group that includes USC, Washington, Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. Those 6 teams, you have to finish first or second, and then you have to win that game. So just getting there is going to be a daunting task. But then you talk about actually winning, it's going to be monumental. However, of all the teams that has the highest ceiling of those teams, I like me some Wisconsin. I think they've got a really high floor. Iowa's got a really, really high floor, but they have a limited ceiling with what they can do. Minnesota, we'll see. Purdue actually to be fair to Purdue, they have gone to the Big Ten championship, the most recent out of all those teams other than Iowa. But that's because, again, that was under a division system. And then Illinois, I don't know. Brett Bielema, we'll see what he can do. But Nebraska, Dylan Raiola, Matt Rule, got another offseason, got the defense figured out year 1. trying to figure out the offense year two. If I watched more Nebraska football than anybody who's not required to watch Nebraska football, being a fan or an analyst. I watch more than anybody, but my good friend is a Nebraska fan. So I was always watching games with him. And if they were below average at quarterback play, they would have gone 8-4. But they were horrendous at quarterback play. I say that to say, bringing this back to Ohio State here, at Oregon, bye week, an interesting Nebraska team at home. Now, again, Nebraska, they had to play defense. They can travel. We'll see what happens there. And then at Penn State. And Penn State that last season, Penn State's offense in big games really didn't have. I like Drew Allar. I think this team right here, this Penn State team, is really geared up for this season and the next season to see what they can really do. They were a lot of babies. They're really, really talented. I'm telling you, James Franklin, a lot of people are like, yeah, he doesn't have the ability to win the big game. I'm telling you, Penn State's going to be a problem. So those 4 games right there, the mid and end of October and the beginning of November is going to be interesting for them. And then down the stretch, you've got Purdue at home. You play at Northwestern. We'll see. I mean, if they just absolutely lay an egg, home against Indiana, and then Michigan at home. And I'm right now projecting them to beat Michigan for them. So if they can handle that 3 to 4 week stretch there with 3 games in it, where it's at Oregon and at Penn State and Nebraska at home, if they can handle that, this team's going to be giving a lot of people problems. One of the big reasons why this team's going to be giving a lot of people problems is because they got. I'm telling you right now, a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, I can't believe you're celebrating this." I am totally celebrating the fact that they got Chip Kelly. And I know you're like, "Well, Chip Kelly, what the hell are you talking about, dude?" I'm telling you right now, what happened here, and this is going to tie into my next, topic that I'm going to talk about. The last time he was an offensive coordinator, so he was the New Hampshire offensive coordinator, absolutely tore it up there, and then he was the offensive coordinator at Oregon. Now, remember, he's going from head coach at UCLA to offensive coordinator for Ryan Day, a quarterback that he recruited to New Hampshire. It's actually kind of a cool little story there. But the cool thing about that is 2007, 2008, 2007, Oregon was the number 10 offense in the country. And 2008, they were the number 7 offense in the country. So, again, a lot of people, when he was at the Eagles and the Niners, yeah, his ability to, maybe like, how do I say this, recruit players, maybe his ability to manage the roster wasn't great. We've seen that before with a couple of people. We've seen it with Bill O'Brien, where he's actually a pretty good play caller and stuff, but when he just does not know personnel very well. But when we've seen him do this, we've seen the fact that Chip Kelly is definitely a good play caller. He's a very, very good play caller. High tempo offense, creative with what he does, simple, but still creative at the same time with, managing the clock and the tempo. He comes over to Ohio State. I'm telling you right now, I think that Ohio State these last couple years has been a team that has emphasized the fact that they're just super, super dynamic on the outside with their receivers. They're really, really dynamic with their receivers on the outside. And the unfortunate thing was Michigan designed their team basically to go up against that spread offense. The same thing happened when Michigan played Washington in the national championship. A lot of people are like, oh man, well, we'll see. I'm like, Michigan is designed to stop these spread offenses. They did it these last 2 years when they played Ohio State. They played CJ Stroud. Oh yeah, that's CJ Stroud. And they did very, very well against them. They were designed to stop them. Now, I think that Ohio State, to win the national championship, has to lean more into a holistic approach to winning the national championship, running the ball, playing defense, making it easy on their quarterback. They did what their best they could with Kyle McCord, but could Kyle McCord carry this team over the top? I'm not even saying Will Howard needs to. I'm saying that this team is switching from, oh yeah, well, we're a dynamic, wide receiver team, and all the quarterback has to do is exist. Unfortunately for that, I think the problem is that once you get up against a team where you need to just push somebody around, I think that adding or re-adding TreVeyon Henderson, adding Quinshon Judkins, emphasizing the run game and playing strong defense, which they had a pretty strong defense last season. I think that's their road to the national championship. I have a feeling whether or not it's going to come true or not, I don't know, but I do know that I have a feeling about Ohio State for 2024. But anyways, I'll see you guys later. Remember, like, share, comment, subscribe. Also go on my X account. Like me, tweet at me, anything you want if you want to see certain things. But that's it for me, guys. I'll see you guys later. I am out.